Hi docents. So I wanted to spend some time talking about Jeff Donaldson today, and I know we don't have a lot of time next week because the new docents are giving their presentations. So just as a confession, I thought that the walkthrough of Allison Zuckerman last time went really well. But I think I did a pretty poor job of modeling techniques on how to talk about Jeff Donaldson. Probably for lack of time, and I was feeling flustered just because the idea of squishing all of this information into such a short period of time was rough. So I don't think I modeled good teaching techniques for you. What I ended up doing was standing in front of the work kind of spouting out a lot of information, which is really, as you know, not how we're trained and not what we like to do in the gallery. So I'd like you to take a look at what I'm doing here and incorporate this kind of structure instead. I think it's much more digestible for all of our visitors, and I think it'll be more successful for your tours. So if at all possible, I would still start in this room. This is the first room you walk into from the doors. So that's the doors at the top of the stairs. It's the first room you walk into, and this is a portrait of Jeff Donaldson. It's a couple years before Africoba was founded. So this is a nice place to start. There's also room in here for a group to sit down. There's a bench, and of course, please use stools if you have older students or have younger students sit on the ground. So we watched that 3-minute clip of an introduction to Africobra when we first started discussing Jeff Donaldson, and I know that tours are tight, but I would still suggest showing that 3-minute video of Africobra. If you just Google Africobra and click on videos, it's the first one that comes up. It's 3 minutes. It is loaded on the iPads, but it gives a really quick introduction to what Africobra is about. So I did it with a group the other day, and they were fine watching that really short 3-minute clip. I think I actually cut it off before the end, but in the artist's own words, it explains what Africobra is and why it was founded. So from there, your students will be set up for success. They understand what Africobra is, and you're not having to explain the whole thing, which probably would take longer than 3 minutes, honestly. Then they get to see the real faces of these people and hear their voices, and that's really powerful. So how would the rest of your tour go? I would introduce the group to Jeff Donaldson by saying, so this is Jeff Donaldson. He's a founder of Africobra that happened in 1968, and you saw from the video what was happening during that time, why Africobra was founded. And what Jeff did was he wrote the manifesto for Africobra, meaning that he wrote down all of their ideas, what their mission was, and what they were going to do. It was kind of like an outline of what Africobra was, what, how, and why. And in that manifesto, he wrote down really specific things about what they were thinking and what their art should look like. So on your tour, what you will do is you have his quotes. I have a basket here with 6 quotes from the manifesto. They look like this. They're gold on the other side. There's 6 of them. They're made out of corrugated cardboard. You can probably guess why. So what I would have you do is tell your students, we're gonna pull Jeff Donaldson's words from that manifesto, and we're gonna find artworks that demonstrate, that prove to us that Jeff Donaldson was doing what he set out to do with Africobra. You can do this a couple ways. You can have a student pick out one of these quotes from the basket and then find an artwork that matches it, or you can break your group into, let's say you have 12 students, there's 6 of these, so you could give each, partners, 2 students each, one of these, and then have them look on their own to try to find a work that represents this quote. So that's probably a little confusing, and I'm gonna demonstrate for you. For this part of your tour, I would suggest moving to this big room. It's the largest room in the exhibition. So I would come in here, I would gather your group in the center of the room and say, okay, so we're gonna try to find artworks that represent these quotes from Jeff Donaldson. So I'm gonna pull one for you, for example. This one says, one of the points of the manifesto is color, color, color. Color that shines, color that is free of rules and regulations, Kool-Aid colors for Kool-Aid images for super real people. So what's great about this is it's in Jeff Donaldson's own words. You'll see here it's very specifically, I bolded these words, so vocabulary words, really what the students are looking for are these words that are all in uppercase. So this one says color, color, color. Do you think students will be able to find one artwork in this room that represents color? Yes, probably. So let's just say, for example, that your students choose this one, right? Okay, so again, the quote is color, 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 color that shines, is free of rules and regulations, Kool-Aid colors for Kool-Aid images. So this one is incredibly colorful. You'd ask your group, okay, why did you choose this one to match that quote? And they'll talk to you about the colors. So that gets you really organically into a discussion of Jeff Donaldson's palette. You'll start to notice that colors repeat around the galleries. We have these blues and pinks and purples all throughout the gallery space. They'll start to understand some of what he is thinking about when he's actually making the work. So that's one example. And that's really a pretty simple one. Let's get into one that might be a little bit more difficult. Okay, so I'm gonna lay this down so you can see. Symmetry that is free repetition with change based on African music and African movement. The rhythm that is easy syncopation and very, very human. The rhythm, the rhythm, the rhythm, rhythm, rhythm. So you'll see that in uppercase here is symmetry and rhythm. That's really what the students are looking for. So I had students the other day go directly to this piece. This is the one titled Jam-Packed Jelly Tight. So can you find symmetry and rhythm here? Yes, you'll see that it's sort of divided right here in half, so bilateral symmetry. And the students I had the other day picked this because they said, oh, rhythm. There's rhythm in the way that it is painted, like there's repetition in shape, but also they noticed there's a piano here and someone actually playing music. You see? So they thought, okay, well, he talks about music, the rhythm, rhythm, rhythm. There are actual musicians in this artwork. So that was a great choice for those students, and they came to that conclusion on their own. They found the symmetry, they found the rhythm. So that's great. Let's pick another one here. My favorite one. Okay. It's also kind of the most difficult, maybe. It could be a little tricky. This one says, the expressive awesomeness that one experiences in African art and life in the USA. So expressive awesomeness, kind of subjective, right? But it then goes on to say that one experiences in African art and life in the USA. So I would tell your students, you can choose either or. So either find something expressively awesome that represents African art or something expressively awesome that represents life in the USA. If you can find both, great. So what did my students the other day choose? They chose this one. So they thought it was expressively awesome because it looked like this figure, they said, was expressing herself by playing this music, right? And I said, okay, what about the other part of the quote? And they said, oh, we can absolutely see African art represented here because they found these figures and they thought those figures looked like they were Egyptian. And they were right. So this was a very organic way for me to start talking about how Jeff Donaldson uses symbols from African history and culture in his paintings. So we said, okay, well, where is Egypt? Egypt is in Africa, and he's using this imagery and sometimes symbols to represent cultures from Africa, sometimes Ghana, sometimes Nigeria, sometimes Egypt. And he's using those symbols and that imagery in his work. And so you could switch from talking about that piece to talking about some of the others where we see more of those symbols. But do you see how this brings it up in a more organic way? The students are looking for it themselves rather than you just walking over to a piece and saying, here are some symbols, let's figure out what they mean. The students are finding them themselves, and there's a reason for them to be looking hard for those things. It gives them a mission. So that's just 3 of the quotes that we have. There are 6 in total, which I think probably 6 is the maximum you're going to cover in this space. You may only do 2, you may only do 1, you may do all 6. I was able to fit in all 6 in the last tour that I have, and I didn't know what artworks the students were going to choose. I had no idea. So I used the knowledge that I had built up while studying Jeff Donaldson with you all and when Teresa did the presentation to sort of talk about the things that we learned, but within this context. And the students were showing me which artworks they thought were representing these ideas. So I think this is a much better structure for you to talk about this exhibition. These props here, of course, are kept in the docent closet. The reason they're on corrugated cardboard is so that you have a tour prop right in your hands whenever you need it. Because very likely your students will want to talk about one of these works that's on cardboard. So let's take a look. I'm gonna switch the camera, I hope you don't get dizzy. So this is one of the ones that's on corrugated cardboard here. So students will want to get close and look at it, and then in your hands you'll have an example of that cardboard that they can touch and you can pass around the group. They'll actually probably already be holding these strips, right? So you can demonstrate how Jeff cut through, like he's my friend, Mr. Donaldson cut through the cardboard to reveal other layers. They'll be holding that in their hands and then they'll be able to look and see how he carved through and did that. So I hope this is helpful. I think it does give you an avenue to talk about all of the things that we learned, but again, this gives you a bit more of a structure, and rather than standing up and trying to explain everything about Jeff Donaldson and Afrocobra, you can do so in these little really digestible nuggets. So good luck. I hope it goes well. If you want to see these in person, stop in the docent closet. They're clearly labeled on one of the back shelves. Thank you all so much. I can't wait to see you next week.